Hey everybody, welcome back to another YouTube video. In today's video, I want to show you guys how to edit in DaVinci Resolve. This is a pretty highly requested video, so hopefully it'll be at least a little bit of help to you guys. This is going to be a very basic video, just an entry point into kind of getting around DaVinci, something where if you're switching from like Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro or something like, or you're just getting into the video editing software space. I myself have only been using DaVinci for probably 5 months now, so I'm definitely by no means an expert, but I think because I am a little bit on the newer end, I can kind of connect with you guys more and talk about things that beginners need to hear. So let's go ahead and hop into it. All right, so I'm loading up DaVinci here. You can see this is Studio 20. By the time you're watching this, it may have changed, I don't know, but it'll pull up your project menus. So I can select from any of my previous projects here. But for you, if you're starting a new project, you'll come over here and double click Untitled Project, name your project wherever you want to put it. Put it in a location that, like if you're using SSDs or something like that, where it's on your computer, not your SSDs, because if you ever swap out SSDs or something like that, and you need to go back to that project, it won't save on that SSD. So let's go ahead, cancel. I already have a project set up here. Let's pull it up. So when you load in, you'll actually load in here, which is your cut page. Now you can see I already have some video clips set up so that we can kind of just get right into it. For me, I don't really use this cut page. It's really just to put your media in and then cut it as you need to. But you can actually do this in this page right here, which is your edit page. You can think of DaVinci as like 7 different pages. That's the way I think of it, at least. So this is your first page. It's your gallery page. This is where you'll import everything. I never use this because you can also do this on this edit page right here, bottom. So yeah, cut and media, they don't really do anything for me. Edit page is where most of your editing is going to take place. So this will be where I import all my footage up here, where I have my timeline down here, where I have my preview right here, and then where I have my inspector. And the inspector is where you'll see, like if I drag this clip in right here, you'll see all of the clip, like editing wise, all the stuff you can do to the clip right here. And you can also do effects and all that kind of stuff, which is right here. So you can, do crossfades for your audio. You can do video transitions, dip to colors. I use those all the time. If you click titles, you can do your texts for subtitles, whatever you need to do. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So let's keep going through the tabs or the pages down at the bottom. Next up, we have Fusion. I'm probably not going to cover Fusion just because if you're a beginner, this is something that's better for like later on. And I personally don't use it that much, so not something I'm going to cover today, but if you guys want to see a future video where I cover Fusion, I'd be more than happy to do that. This is a big one. This is going to be your color grading page. So you kind of have to rewire your brain and how you think and how you approach color grading a little bit, but it's actually super easy to use once you get the hang of it. And I'll kind of give you guys a template later on in the video on how to use it and how to color grade. The 6th tab you have is the Fairlight tab. This is going to be, you can think of it as like color grading for audio. If you want to really get like the most out of your audio, you can use this page. Again, I'm not going to go over this because I think for beginners, the main focus is going to be like editing your clips and color grading them. But if you guys want a future video on this, I would be more than happy to share. And then your last page is going to be your export tab. So you're going to have all your export settings right here. You'll add them to your render queue, and then your render queue will pop up here in the top right. And then you can render whatever you need to render. So usually I'm only rendering one at a time, but if you're doing multiple projects or multiple, different quality settings, so if you're doing like one in 4K, one in 1080p, you can just like stack them up and then render them all. So just a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and start with your clips. So this is your master, which is your media. You can see I already have a folder here marked videos, and I'm going to show you guys how to kind of do that. But I basically try to break everything up into folders. So I'll have one for videos, one for audios, one for any extras, any like memes I throw into the videos or sound effects or something like that. So let's go ahead and right click new bin. I'm gonna name this one audio. And usually I do another bin here where I go here and select new bin. And I would either do music or upbeat music or lo-fi music or whatever I want to do. For this one, I'm just going to import media because I'm not really doing anything. And you can see I already have media pulled up here. So I'm just going to select the media that I'll be using. And these are some good videos or some good audios that I have for editing and, just throwing as background noise. But we'll just stick with this for now. So these are going to be my 2 main folders here. let's run over to the video real quick. I have a mixture of vertical and horizontal clips for us to edit, so you guys can kind of see the process for each of those. The biggest thing is come up here to File. Before you ever drag anything into your timeline, come down to Project Settings right here and make sure that your timeline frame rate is whatever you want it to be. Once you see how I can click it and select it here. Once I drag something into the timeline, let's say I drag this clip into the timeline right here, and I go back to File, Project Settings, I can no longer change my frame rate. You can change your playback frame rate, but you can never change your timeline frame rate. Press Command Z. Anytime I do an undo, I just press Command Z. If I want to redo, it's Command Shift Z. If you didn't know that, those are your quick controls. But now if I go back to Project Settings, you can see there's nothing in the timeline, so I can change my frame rate as needed again. So before you do anything, make sure that you select your timeline frame rate properly. There's a couple other settings that you can do for like color management, little things here and there. If you're looking for those settings, there's people who have videos on like just those settings or just settings for DaVinci. So I'd really recommend one of those videos. I don't want to put too much time into that kind of stuff. I want to really get into the editing part. One thing in the settings before we do move on is if you come up here and look at the three dots in the top right corner of the project settings, you can set current settings as default preset. This is something that's helped me where I just have it at 29.97 frames per second, vertical resolution, and 4K processing. The reason for this is 80% of the time I'm editing social media reels or TikTok or whatever it may be, those kinds of videos. So it's really easy for me to just hop into editing and not have to worry about changing my timeline frame rate or vertical, horizontal, whatever it may be. Because the first clip that we're gonna be editing is vertical, I'm just gonna keep vertical resolution. But when we edit the horizontal ones, I'll switch it to horizontal resolution. All right, I think that's a pretty good idea of where we are. So you have media here, you have your playback up here, you have your inspector / effects or whatever you need up here, and then you have your timeline down here. The reason I have the timeline, like you could bring the inspector down and have your maybe playback or whatever be bigger, but I like having the timeline spaced out because I usually do longer videos and it's easier for me to just scroll back and forth. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna double click this. This clip is now in my inspector. It's not in my timeline, but I'm looking at the clip before I drag it in. This is basically, you can think of it as like you're setting up this clip to drag into your timeline. The reason I'm doing this beforehand is I don't want to drag the whole clip and audio into the timeline. I want to drag just the clip and just a part of the clip. So you can see here, you have your bars, and these will determine how much of the clip you're going to drag into your timeline. This red thing right here will show you, where in the clip you are, but the white bars will show you actually like what you're gonna drag into your timeline. So let's say I drag in like the whole clip from the media here, it'll drag video and audio and it'll drag the whole thing. And then if I come over here and I go back to how I had it, and I just select this is your video, this is your audio, so you can drag them in individually. I'll just select my video and I'll bring it in. You can see how much smaller it becomes when you drag it in versus like, let's say I have the whole clip and I come over here, that whole clip, I don't need all that. I just need this small selected area. So keep in mind, I shot all of this in 120 frames per second. So I'm gonna be slowing it down 25%, or slowing it down to 25%, and that'll have it technically set at 30 frames per second, if that makes sense. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to right click this clip, go to change clip speed, and set speed to 25%. Now because I did that, I'm gonna pull it out. And you can set it to where it'll like ripple the timeline, so when you change the speed, it'll push everything back. But I usually don't like to do that just so I don't mess everything up. Now if I play it, you can see it's nice and smooth, very smooth, but it's in basically slow-mo. Now because I zoomed in here, I just kind of use my trackpad to zoom. You can come over here and go back to fit, and it'll go back to showing you the preview properly. Now if we come over here, you'll see transform. Once you have your clip in the timeline, you can do all your transformations. Let's say I come over here and I make whatever transformations I want to. Let's say like I do a zoom, right? I zoom in. If I go back to my clip here, it doesn't affect it. So once you bring it into the timeline, whatever you do with these clips up here will not affect what's in the timeline. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's go back to our clip here. There's a couple different things you need to know. Let's say you have something that's a little off center. All you really need to do is just zoom in, center it. X is for your obviously x-axis, and then Y is for your y-axis, so which is up and down. Mine's pretty centered, so I'm gonna go over here and reset everything. If you wanna have a little marker cursor in the middle, what you can do is you can come over here and you can do guides. So if I wanna have guides here or like rulers on the side, like I can add rulers, whatever I wanna do, you can add all that. For me, I like just having the center, it's nice. And then you can also select different aspects. So this is 4/5 is for social media, like for Instagram. 9/16 is for reels, 16:9 is reels, just landscape. You can have 1:1, whatever you need to do. So that's how you select all of your different aspect ratios. But you can see I'm in 16:9. As you can see, it selects right here. So let's say if you were shooting like a in vertical and you needed to use it for a horizontal for some reason, I could click 16:9 here and it would show me exactly what would be in that horizontal image. I'm gonna go ahead and click off of all that and we're gonna get back to editing this clip. So I have everything I've wanted to edit here. You can do speed changes, you can crop it how you need to, you can crop left, crop right. Like let's say you have 2 different clips, you could crop, and that's why I have this plus marker actually, is because sometimes I'll crop like that, but you can crop right in the middle. The only other things I really use are speed change if I need to do any kind of like slow speed ramping. So all I'll do is like I'll select my marker here, then I'll select a marker here. I'll go back to that first marker. Okay, so I have that first marker here. What I'll do is I'll just do like a smooth transition and then we can change speed to like, let's say back to 100%. So it'll go, oh wait, I still have it cropped a lot. So it'll go slow, faster, and then back to slow. So super easy to do like any kind of speed ramping or whatever you want to do, and then you can always turn that off as needed. But what I'll do is I'll just reset everything. So press Z, Z, Z. You're back to where it was before. Something helpful is like, let's say you throw a marker down, like I threw this marker down right here and you want to be able to find it super easily. You can press M and it'll set a marker right there. So you can see exactly where you marked your, little red dot for the speed change or whatever. And then you can always delete the marker later. So just if you want to keep track of everything, that's a really easy way to do it. The only other things I use are stabilization. Sometimes I never use perspective. Sometimes I'll use translation. It's not very often, but for the most part, I just try to stabilize everything by myself, like with my gimbal. I found that DaVinci stabilization is nowhere near as good as Premiere Pro's, which sucks. That's one of the benefits of Premiere Pro, is being able to use the warp stabilizer. You can still get away with using the stabilization with translation or similarity with DaVinci. Maybe I'll do a video on that in the future, but for the most part, it's not that good. So you know how to import a clip into your timeline. You know how to change it. If you want, you can come to audio. You can, select whatever audio you want to. Draw that in, put your clips up to the audio, make sure that it's, on beat or, whatever it is. So, make sure you can kind of, this right here, the plus and minus is how you can, mark in or out. And I'm just using my keypads to change where my marker is like this. Kind of line those up. Let's say you want to cut the clip right here because you want like another clip to start right here. You can either bring this and drag it, or you can come here, cut it, and then just delete it. You can use Shift Delete. So like, let's say you have this clip here and this clip here, right? So you have 3 different clips. So you have 1, 2, 3. If you want to delete this clip and draw this clip immediately back into this, obviously you can just cover it over like that, or select this clip and then Shift Delete, and that'll, what's called as like a ripple delete. So it'll bring everything, your whole timeline in. So like if you have a clip that you don't want to make into the cut or whatever it may be, you can just ripple delete it and you'll be good to go. That's all pretty easy. That is well and dandy. Let's go to another vertical clip. I already have the part that I want selected, which is right here. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this in. And again, I shot this at 120 frames per second. So I'm gonna go to change clip speed, 25%, and then drag it out to about here. So they're about the same length. So you have clip number 1 of the GTR, which is just a small little panning shot. And then you have clip number 2, which is just gonna be a nice little painting shot of the bike. So 2 very different clips, and I'm gonna show you guys how to color grade each of them. Again, I'm not really gonna show you guys any kind of audio stuff because for the most part, most of you are just gonna be using this for reels or maybe some YouTube videos, but just putting music over it. And obviously you're not gonna be doing anything with music because it's just music. If you're doing any kind of like, you know, editing people's voices or anything like that, I'd say, yeah, you could do it. Use Fairlight, but for the most part, it's not really needed. Fusion, you could also use it for stuff like this, but honestly, this is very simple stuff and I want to keep it as simple as possible, so I'm not putting too much information on you. Let's go to, oh, you know what? Before we do that, I just kind of want to show you. So watch this clip. It's pretty stable. There's some micro jitters. Let's go to stabilization. Go to translation, we'll say smoothness, maybe 0.5, we'll bring strength down, I don't want it super strong, and then we'll press stabilize. It'll stabilize it, and then let's watch it back and see if there's any difference. Zoom in on this. So yeah, I mean, you can see it stabilize it a little bit. There were some small little micro jitters that I had in there, and it really took most of those out. So I don't want to turn the strength up too much because then it'll start cropping in and everything kind of heavily. But yeah, you could just, for small, simple stuff like this, you can just use translation and call it a day. There's some way harder ways to like stabilize rollers and stuff like that, which I'm not gonna get into because it is actually a lot. But yeah, this is like a super easy way for you to just kind of get into stabilization. You need to already have a pretty stable clip, but if you ever need to stabilize the footage and you have some small micro jitters, that is the way to go. Color grading. This is like everybody's worst enemy. DaVinci color grading runs off of what's called nodes. And you can think of, the way I think of it is like each node is its own different effect that you're applying to the image or to the video. So for instance, like one of my nodes will be saturation, one of them will be exposure, one of them will be my S-curve. And basically instead of just doing everything on one node, you have them separated into individual nodes. So I'm pressing Shift S. So I'll create 5 extra nodes. So I'll have 6 nodes total. And the base, you can name these nodes if you want to. If you want to, you can like set node labels or whatever, and you can be like exposure. You do like WB for white balance or something like that. But for the most part, you won't really need that. So the first thing I always do is 8 will be my LUT. So let's just label this as LUT. And that'll be like my finishing LUT. And then 7 is always my color space transformation. So let's set that as CST. Everything that I'm doing is with Sony. So if you're doing multiple different color spaces, like if you're adding in like DJI action cams or something like that, you may need to change how you're doing your nodes. But for me, if I just come to CST here, I'll go to effects up here in the top right, and then I'll scroll down to color space transformation, and that's CST color space transformation. So I'll drag this onto my CST and it'll bring up my effect settings. So I'll do input color space, I'll press S and it'll bring me down to Sony S Gamut 3, and then I'll press S again and it'll bring me down to S-Log 3. And you can see it just puts me in S-Log 3. Obviously if you're in Canon or Nikon or whatever you're doing, do that accordingly, but this is for Sony. D-Log M for DJI, whatever it may be. So you can see it's really dark. We have a very dark clip, especially compared to the kind of clip that we're gonna be editing with my bike. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna so I highlighted all of these, and I'm just gonna press Command C, which is copy, and then Command V, which is paste. Okay, so very different clips, but let's go back to the GTR. What I'll do is I'll start with my exposure. So this is gonna be a very rough kind of exposure, just kind of feeling out how much grain we're adding. So what I like to do is I kind of like to look in the ceiling up here, and you can see it's adding a little bit of grain. It's actually not as bad as I imagined. I was shooting at 12,800 ISO, so I thought it'd be worse, but let's go ahead and bring this back down. I kind of want a darker vibe with this one. I want the lights to pop a little bit, so I'm gonna bring my highlights up. I like to bring my midtones down just a bit, and then my blacks I like to bring down a good bit, especially if I'm shooting at night. The next thing you're gonna do is mess with your white balance. So it'll literally just be for this temperature right here and the tint right here. So I'm gonna make this a little bit bluer since we're in a parking garage. And then I'm gonna bring the tint a little bit to the green side, but nothing too crazy. We'll do a little bit of like the color grade a little bit later on. We'll go ahead and hop into my fifth node, which is gonna be saturation. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring down most of the yellows because I don't like yellows in like the ceiling and everything. You can see it's bringing down some of the saturation in the lights, but I'm actually okay with that because it makes it look just a little bit like the light's shining. And what I can do is I can bring the oranges up just a bit so that it gives a little bit of that saturation back in. What I'm also gonna do is I'm gonna bring the blue saturation down just a tad and then bring the brightness up a bit. And same thing for my cyans or my aquas, just bring the brightness up a bit. And this is me just getting it a little bit closer to its original natural color. My reds are a little too orange, so I'm kind of just like messing with those, and you can see like I'm down here in the skin color right here, which is like it's like an orange basically, and then I'm just playing with the hue down here. So you can see most of this is actually being affected by the orange tab, not the red tab. So what I'm gonna do is kind of bring it a little bit over to the pinkish side, which sounds a little bit weird, but it'll actually show up as more red than orange, like orangey yellow. So just a little bit of a deeper red. And if you ever want to reset it, you can just press this arrow right here and it will reset everything that you've done. So I like the reddish color. I'm gonna bring a little bit of brightness out in them, and that should be good to go. So basically you can think of each of these as like their own individual color frames, like in Lightroom or something like that, where you have your reds here. This is your color, so you can kind of like mess around with how the center is. So you can see I've brought the oranges like a little bit off, same with the yellows. So it'll kind of show you what you're messing with here, but this is your luminance, this is your saturation, your hue. Anyway, that's your saturation tab. My next tab is gonna be for my S curves. So you want that small little S. I'm not gonna do too much because I don't wanna overdo it, but just a small little change, just things that you can't get with your exposure to help it make it either look a little bit more natural or bring a little bit more contrast into it. So this is your timeline, your very small timeline right here. So let's just kind of play it and see how it's looking. Okay, it's not too bad. Obviously I'd probably go in and do a couple small things, but I'm not gonna worry about that right now. Before I put my LUT on, what I'm gonna do is, I'm actually gonna name these nodes because all the other ones are named, so I feel bad. These two down here, I kind of saved these for last. You can put these anywhere, but basically you can see, okay, it's going from here to node 1, to node 2, to node 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with node 1. This is gonna be a mask. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna go over here to this window and you're gonna pull out a mask. Now you can either do rectangular, circular, a pen tool, whatever you wanna do, but the place where the pink dots are will determine how much of feathering is going on. And then the blue will be like the actual mask itself. So for me, I am gonna be doing a mask coming in from the bottom, so I'm gonna have quite a bit of feathering going on with it. Now once I have my mask drawn, I'm gonna go over here and come to my lift, gamma, gain, and offset tabs. Now because I'm not doing too much with this mask, it's literally just to bring darkness from the bottom to kind of bring a little bit of focus back to the subject. I'm just gonna pull offset down so it just darkens where it is. And you can see I need to make it a little bit wider because it's only affecting the middle. So let's widen it a little bit here. And it's just gonna pull from there. So to see the mask without, I'm just gonna press 01 and then mask width. So you can see just brought a little bit of focus back up. You can see the ground is just a little bit too bright, especially compared to the roof. So I'm pretty happy with that. And then this one is just gonna be a circular mask and it'll be coming up from the middle, maybe down just a little bit to kind of show where the light was coming from. So maybe something like this. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna widen this a little bit and maybe turn this as well, just because we're turned. And all I'm gonna do is just bring up a little bit of that brightness going to the car. And I'm gonna bring up the blacks just a little bit, and that just brings a little bit of detail back into the car. So this is without, and that's with. So just a little bit of brightness hitting the car again. I do the same thing with my photos. If you watch my Lightroom video, I do the same exact thing. So the last thing I'm gonna do here is a LUT. I have a couple different finishing LUTs I choose from. I really love to use Enclave, but you can see it kind of messes with the blue just a little bit too much. So let's go down to pure finishing. These usually look really good. It messes with the blue as well, but it takes out all of the extra colors that I don't like. So I'm actually gonna click this, and then I'm gonna go back to my saturation tab, and I'm gonna bring the blue saturation back up. And we're back to where we were before. I'm gonna go ahead and close LUTs. By the way, you have your gallery here. You don't really need it, but you can, select the LUTs. You can select your media pool, bring, clips in, whatever you need to do. But this is gonna be where all your clips from your timeline show up that are already in your timeline. So I always like to do my timeline first and then do my color grading after. Plus, if you color grade your images and you go back to your timeline, it can lag a little bit just because you've already done that. So I really recommend just doing your timeline and then doing your color grading after, so it's not so laggy because it's having to carry all these color grades over. Now you can go to your, I'm closing LUTs so you can kind of see my timeline, my nodes a little bit more. You can introduce some other effects, like I could introduce some dehaze, I could introduce some, like if you're doing rollers, you could introduce some blur. What I'll do a lot is, or what a lot of people do is do halation. So I'm just gonna press Shift S, and I'm just gonna throw it right here. I don't think it really matters, honestly. And then I'm gonna go to secondary glow and bring that in, which secondary glow to me looks cool. This is really all I'll do. Usually I won't do much with like everything else. I don't know if I really like it with this, just because it looks like it's a little bit much, but you can change the color of the secondary glow, so maybe we'll go like with a little bit of like a gold glow. And then you can see you can kind of affect everything. I'm not a huge fan of this. You can see this is with, this is without, and you can do whatever you like, but a lot of people like to do it, especially for like nighttime kind of stuff. One other effect that I like to do, I'm just gonna go to the search bar and select noise. Okay, noise reduction, not denoise. And you can just select a whole nother clip. What I'll actually do is I'll click my CST and then do it. That way it's here towards the end, and then I'll just do noise reduction, add that in, close up effects. And if I select all these nodes, and just so you can see, and if I throw it onto this clip here, it's obviously not gonna look as good. It's not terrible, but it's definitely nowhere near as good. Like you can see, it doesn't really work for this clip here. So let's go back here. We already have our CST thrown on. You can see it, this is with it, this is without it. Okay, so we're good to go there. Let's go to exposure. Obviously you can add nodes as you need to or subtract them. If you want to do things quicker, you can have less nodes. But for the most part, I like to just put all my nodes in this kind of framework where I have exposure, white balance, saturation, S-curve, my color space transform, and then my LUT, and then I'll add masks as needed. So let's start with exposure. It's already pretty well exposed. You can see my bike is a little underexposed, so I'm gonna bring the whole image up a little bit and then bring my whites down because the sky's a little high. You can see it's here. So bring the sky down a little bit, introduce some more of the sky here where the clouds were a little bit blown out. I'm gonna bring my midtones just down a little bit, and then I'm gonna bring my blacks down. What we'll do next is the white balance. So I'll come over here, let's do it a little bit more golden, and then introduce just a little bit of purple into it. Nothing too crazy, but just a tad. We'll go over here to our saturations. You can do the whole saturation if you want to. For the most part, I try not to touch that, and I just do, the single clips by themselves. Let's go over here and go to my S-curve. Again, I'm gonna bring the shadows down, highlights will come up, and you can see we're getting some of that contrast that I was looking for into the frame. Now you can see the sky's blown out a little bit. I'm not gonna worry about it too much. I'm just gonna fix it with a mask. I'm gonna bring this mask up quite a bit, and then I'm gonna go back to my exposure and bring the whole exposure down. that looks a lot better. So I don't really even need a mask from the bottom here because you can see it's already a little bit dark from the shadows from the bikes. I kind of like it like that. So I'll use this secondary mask that we had, and I'm gonna bring a, you know what I'll do just to switch it up a little bit? I'll do a little pin and just draw. Okay, so there's our mask. Now, you can feather it if you want to. If I go to softness, I can kind of determine how much I want. Go to the outside, feather it on the outside. Because I don't want to do too much, you know what I mean? And maybe what we'll do is we'll pull it up just a little bit. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring down, I'm assuming it's just the highlights, yep. I'm just gonna bring down the highlights a little bit. And then I'm gonna bring the whole sky up. What I'll do is I'm actually gonna bring the shadows up a little bit, and that should help. There we go. So this is without the node, this is with the node. It's not too much of a difference, but it's enough to where I'm pretty satisfied with it. Now if you really want to, you could probably mask out Aubrey's bike, or like mask out the grass and like make the grass look a little bit less green, so you know, more of the highlights on Aubrey's bike, or you know, whatever you want to do. You can do the water, you can do the mountains. It's really just how much time you want to spend editing your clip. Let's add a mask here. We'll go to a pen tool. Let's track just this little rock right here. Very rough mask, but let's just bring the exposure on it super bright, right? Just so we can see it. And then what you can do is you can come over here to tracking. You can track the window forward. And I'm going to track back, and just the reason for tracking back is just so it has more points to track on. It's not necessary, but if you want to use it, you can. Okay, let's see how good of a job it did at tracking. It's a pretty solid job, actually. It's like staying on there like perfectly, even when we're moving a lot. So, I mean, you can see how you can kind of track it if you need to. That's so funny. That was actually really good tracking. But that's why I track it forward and backwards, so it's as accurate as possible. Anyway, if you're doing rollers, or if you're having like a car where you just want to track it and just like set your exposure for the car, kind of like I do with Lightroom, you can just track it and then we'll let it do its thing. Well, let's take a look at maybe this rollers clip right here, kind of like we were talking about. I'm going to go ahead and figure out what part of the clip I want, but because it's a horizontal clip, I'm going to go up to File, go to Project Settings, go to Use Vertical Resolution. So you can see here, because we set up the horizontal resolution, it's now showing the verticals with bars, because obviously we edit them in the vertical resolution timeline. Same thing for the R9 and R7 clip. You can see they're all color graded, looking real pretty. But let's go ahead and introduce a horizontal clip. So I have this clip of the R7. I'm going to do this before the rollers of the R9, just because I have it selected already. So you can see we have a shot where the sunlight's not shining through, and then as you go through the clip, it shines. So this should be a really good dynamic shot for us to color grade. So let's go back over to the R7 clip. And what I'm going to do is pull the timeline over just a bit so we have some room for our nodes. And I'm going to add those 6 first nodes and then 2 more nodes for masks. So I'll add those in just a sec, but I'm going to space these out. So just remember, we have exposure and white balance. Then over here we have saturation and S-curve. Then here we have color space transformation, and then our final finishing LUT. I'm going to go ahead and on this one, I'm going to add the 2 masks. Let's go ahead and go to Effects. Let's go to Color Space Transform, and we'll throw that on here. Go to S, Gamut 3, S Log 3. All right, good start. Let's go ahead and start off with our exposure. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Now this was in December, so not much color in the leaves, so I want to make sure that I add a little bit of orange to help the leaves pop a little bit. Let's go ahead and add some of that orange just bring a little bit of warmth into the image. And instead of going with like a pinkish tint, which may bring a little bit more of that warmth, I'm actually going to bring a greenish tint in to kind of give some separation between the orange and then the like greenish blues and the red. Go ahead and hit saturation, and this is where I'm going to kind of focus on those leaves a little bit. I don't have to worry too much about the bike itself because it's silver, so I can kind of play with the leaves as I want. So I'm going to definitely bump the orange up a bit, bring the brightness up. Reds aren't affecting it too much, maybe just some leaves here and there, so I'm not going to do too much with that. Just barely bring the yellows up since that's kind of affecting the sunlight. Not too much affecting the greens over there. And in this clip, I'm going to show you something a little bit differently from the other clips. And I'm going to add one more node after I do my S-curve. Let's go S-curve, just bring down the shadows a bit, bring up the highlights. It's a little bit too far down. Let's try that. And this is going to be, we'll actually add this right before the finishing light. This is going to be for what you would call like your actual color grade, and this can be like bringing blues or bringing oranges or whatever it may be into each of the areas of your image. So this is something that I didn't do in the other clips because I didn't really need it, and this is something that's a little bit more advanced, but the darks are basically going to be like your very black points. Your shadows are going to be kind of like your midtones, and then your lights are going to be your highlights. So I don't recommend that you play with this until you're kind of comfortable with DaVinci, or if you've done this in Premiere, you can kind of start with it. But basically, these are like in your Lightroom, your color grading tab. These are going to be the same exact kind of wheels. So you can see the darks affect my shadows. So let's bring a little maybe blue into the shadows here. Nothing too crazy, and I'm actually going to bring the exposure down just a bit on those. Then your shadows are going to be kind of like your midtones, which is what's affecting most of the image. So if you kind of want that, filmy look or creamy look, you can bring some greenish oranges into it. I'm going to bring just a little bit of orange. I don't want to get too much of that pinkish. I actually want to be more towards the green side. So I'm going to do somewhere like this. And obviously your lights will be your highlights, so I don't want to overdo them, but let's call it maybe a little bit of that goldish. Bring the exposure up. It's a little bit too much for me, so I'm gonna bring it down. And I think this just affects kind of like how much you're doing. Just a little bit there. I'm actually gonna bring the shadows back down towards the blue a little bit. Exposure down. Alright, so this is a tab that you don't really need to do. Obviously it makes a big difference, especially in the filmic look, but I probably wouldn't do this if you're just starting out. Go ahead and kind of get comfortable with doing all your other color grading, all your other tabs, whatever it may be, and then come and do your like high dynamic range route. And then come in and do your high dynamic range. I can say that. And then come in and do your high dynamic range wheels a little bit later once you're comfortable with color grading in DaVinci. Obviously this was a quick little edit, but really it's just bringing in some of that golden hour light into the clip. This last one, because I did that color correcting, I don't really want a LUT. Maybe I'll bring in like a pure LUT. This LUT doesn't really do that much, like you can see. Without. I don't know what I like better, if I like it with or if I like it without, but I'm pretty happy with that. So just kind of bring in that kind of filmic look. I'm coming over here to the export tab. I'm not going to do anything in Fairlight right now, but you can name it like R9 rollers or whatever you want to do. Click browse and set it to whatever folder you want to export it to, and then for me, I like to keep it in H.264 codec. You could do H.265. A lot of people do that for social media. Not necessarily. I'll get a timeline resolution 1080 by 1920 for vertical, and then 1920 by 1080 HD for horizontal. Then I restrict it if I'm doing any kind of like social media work, I'll restrict it to 25,000. It can vary, so you can kind of mess with it, anything from like 20,000 to 50,000. Kind of just mess with it and see what works best for you. Anyway, I'm just gonna add this to the render queue. You know, R9 rollers, boom, right there, whatever you want. Final destination, let's just say desktop. And then you can render all, and then it'll go to my desktop. And it'll render both the R7 clip and the R9 clip. So if you want one or the other not in it, you can take them in and out as needed. That's pretty much the basis for DaVinci though. Like I said, you don't really need those first two tabs of the media and the cut. All I really ever work with is the edit tab and the color grading tab. I sometimes do Fusion and Fairlight, but not as much. And especially if you're just kind of getting into this and wanting to do the more simple stuff, those are really the only two you need, just edit and color grading. I mean, obviously export, but yeah, hopefully this was helpful to you if you're just kind of getting into DaVinci. If you're an expert in this kind of thing, or you've been, you know, doing it for years, drop some knowledge in the comment. Help the community out a little bit. I'm sure there's people who will have questions. If you do have questions, feel free to shoot me a message on Instagram or just ask us down below in the comments. But hopefully this was helpful for you guys. And if you want to see more with DaVinci, let me know, because I think it's fun, and I'd love to do more in the future. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out.